Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. That sound you hear is Jim and I's cat Poe being all plaintive and cute at the same time. Oh, goodness. Welcome, everyone, to. Gosh, she's really rowdy tonight, Jim.
I know.
What is going on?
I don't know. Just wants attention, I'm sure.
Maybe she wants to ride on the back of a dragon.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Poe's dragon.
Oh, goodness. Well, we are here to discuss a couple of movies. We're going to do a double feature this week. It's been a while since we've done one of those. So, sorry, movie news. See you later. We'll come back to you some other time. But before we talk Pete's Dragon and Sausage Party, which is, maybe that's going to be a divisive conversation. Let me introduce my wonderful co-host, Jim Poliafco. You heard from already. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey, movie boys and movie girls. Glad to be back with you again.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned movie girls because we have had several comments on YouTube lately from girls.
Really?
Rather than guys, yeah. They've a couple of them have been bots.
Well,
but
girl bots.
But I know we have some female listeners. We've had some comments from some too.
We have.
Ex Machina, you mean? Like that?
No. More like
her.
Automated scripts that spit out like portions of sentences that sometimes kind of sort of make sense. That type of bot.
Yeah, like, XXX111222.
Hi, Brad.
Come find my channel, spelled,
You want sex? Click link.
Provocatively. But you know what? We've had some real female listeners too. We heart you as well. So thanks for hanging out with us.
Absolutely.
Hey, so we've already got like 10 people watching, guys. So I have a feeling they're here for Sausage Party and not Pete's Dragon.
You never know. This episode's a sausage party, right?
Well, it's always a sausage party on the
us,
Movie Bears podcast. That's pretty much true. But we will get to the sausage party. We are going to talk about Pete's Dragon first, however. So if you're here for Sausage Party, dig in for 20 minutes or so. Come prepared to talk about thick sausages and juicy buns in just a little bit. But before we get to that,
Juicy buns.
Here comes our discussion of Pete's Dragon. All right, if you haven't seen Pete's Dragon yet, we're going to give you the lowdown. Spoiler-free. We'll tell you whether we think it's worthwhile checking out, and then we will give you fair warning before we go to Spoiler Town. But, Jim, why don't you give us the setup and your initial thoughts here?
Sure. So Pete's Dragon is what we'll call a reimagining of a 1977 Disney film by the same name. But other than like an orphaned boy named Pete and an animated dragon named Elliot, the two films share almost nothing else in common. You really got to dig to find similarities between the two films. Where the original one was mostly kind of comedic and lighthearted, like those 70s Disney movies were. A feel-good story. That one had song and dance numbers in it all the way through it. This new Pete's Dragon is more of I'm going to say like a low-key magical adventure story about the bond between Pete, the boy Pete, and the dragon Elliot, and themes of longing for family and a place to belong, all kind of wrapped up in there. This one's written and directed by a guy named David Lowery, who came onto the scene in 2013 or 2014 with a movie called A Small Indie that made made the critics stand up and take notice, called Ain't Them Bodies Saints, which I caught up with just before we went to see Pete's Dragon. And I thought it was a beautiful story about a criminal trying to find his way back home to his family, and staged kind of like a small-town Western. But anyway, here he tackles this big Disney, people have called it a remake, but I'm going to harp on this. It's not a remake at all, really. They're not remaking this like Ghostbusters was a remake of the original Ghostbusters. This is a total reimagining and something totally new. This one stars Bryce Dallas Howard, Robert Redford, Carl Urban, who we just talked about in a movie last week or 2 weeks ago. The new Star Trek movie, plays Bones in the new Star Trek crew.
Damn it, Jim! I'm a doctor, not a dragon hunter.
Well, not a lumberjack. Wes Bentley and newcomer Oaks Fegley as Pete here in this movie. I had been looking at this movie for a long time since hearing about its production. I think I plugged it on the show when maybe the first trailer came out. So my expectations were really high, and I ended up liking this movie quite a bit. This is different for a Disney movie. This is a big Disney studio movie that has a very real feeling of the indie sensibility. This movie felt like an indie movie, and except for the CGI effects of the dragon, this totally could have been an indie movie. And I like that, and it had a kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, but kind of a real humble feel to it, a quietly humane feel to it, earnest, noble, and we can attribute all that to the writer-director here, David Lowery, because that's based on what I saw in his previous movie, Ain't Them Body Saints. He brings that quality to these movies, and he definitely puts his stamp on it and makes it specific to his style, and I like that. This felt like kind of a throwback to the older Disney movies, but without too much of the over-the-top corniness of those movies, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and those kind of movies. This one creates a world that is like refreshingly removed from what we see in most children's movies today. And make no mistake, this is a children's movie. I think a lot of adults and older children may dig this movie, but it's not going to be necessarily for everyone in that age range. But I think any kid, if you have kids, families with kids, I'd strongly recommend seeing this movie. But yeah, I'm going to kick it off to you guys. I've talked about it enough. I would recommend it. I really, really like this movie. We'll talk about more of the stuff in spoilers, but I think it's perfect for young kids. I said I'd strongly recommend it to kids, but it isn't an action. It's got action in it, but it's not what you would expect like a kids movie today, especially if you're looking at movies like Zootopia or The Secret Life of Pets or Minions, where there's like a joke a minute, a gag a minute, a chase scene all through the movie. That's not what this movie is. It's a great movie to introduce children, I think, to the magic of movies, and I recommend it.
So we have a live comment, partially in giant capital letters, that says, "Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is not a Disney film!" Exclamation point.
You're right. It's not a Disney film, but it definitely had around that time, it definitely had a Disney sensibility to it.
That was Clifton Coles. We're drawing a comparison.
Cliffy knows his stuff when it comes to those movies, especially those musical movies, I think.
I wanted to read the comment before I told you who it was from.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Hi, Cliffy.
What up, Cliffy? Oh, goodness. All right. And we have another comment as well, and Will, maybe you can kind of work a response in. So Grizius says, "Did you like the look of the new dragon? Some other critics I've heard hated his design for some reason."
Oh, wow.
Was that for somebody in specific or just for
I was tossing that out to Will, but I guess if you want to weigh in.
Will, then I'll weigh in.
Okay, catch the ball. I'm going to run with this one. Yeah, so I did like the design of the dragon. I'll be honest, it took me a moment to get used to the design of the dragon. And part of that's because when you think of Pete's dragon, you think about the classic cartoon, who has just dripping with character. Like, that is a very iconic character. This one, because it tries to be much more, Jim, you said the word humble, absolutely right. I'm also thinking the word in the best way possible. This is a very simple story. And in doing so, like, it went for a design that was less about being over the top and caricatured and something that fit in this world that was developed. And once I kind of settled into the groove of this movie, I found myself enjoying the dragon's design more and more. But that was me personally. I can totally see how someone might be a little turned off by it just because it's it is so radically different than what you think of with this character.
Open your mind. Open
Well,
your mind.
I mean, I'll say it's okay. It's okay to be turned off by that. Like, I totally get that. I totally get that. You know, with any type of reimagining, remake, or whatever, there is going to be a certain amount of, like, you know, what do you change? What do you do different? What do you adhere to? And that's the balancing act. For me, what I liked so much about this movie, and I'll say it's a recommend as well. This is a very stripped down, kind of simple and direct story. I felt like there wasn't a lot going on, and that's not a bad thing. Like, this one, you know, finds a nice little groove, nice little lane, and drives that all the way to the end. It's a very sweet movie. It doesn't feel like there's any cynicism or any, like, you know, lingering darkness. This is a fantastic film to watch with kids, to watch if you're just in a funk. Like, I felt like this would be a very uplifting film. It's hard for me to not draw comparisons to other Disney movies. I've been probably more so than the two of you. I've been less impressed by the live-action Disney movies that have been coming, Jungle Books of the world. I liked the direction of this quite a bit. I felt like they brought something to this story that needed to be seen on screen. Jim, you said the indie sensibilities, absolutely right. I felt like parts of this film looked like they could have been done with, like, an Instagram filter, in the best way possible. It looked pretty. I also really liked the child actor in this. What's Oaks? Fegley. He had to carry a lot of weight in this movie, and as we've seen, you know, when you have a child actor whose job is to kind of do all of the heavy lifting, it can be really hit or miss. You know, nothing against the actors. It's just, you know, ask you know, an 8-year-old who has no film experience to carry a 90-minute film. That's a heavy undertaking. I think by and large this kid did a pretty good job. I had some small quibbles, nothing that made me not enjoy this film. I felt like as it got into, like, the Carl Urban not subplot, but kind of that part of the story, it felt like it kind of lost some of the magic, and I felt like they didn't let Elliot and Pete have as much time to bond as I think they needed to when they needed to do it. Those are quibbles. I think the movie definitely rebounded by the time it got to the end of its third act, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is a recommend for me. Again, not a grand slam, but it's definitely one that I recommend you watch. It's a cool movie.
You know, it's interesting, this whole sort of notion about the dragon's design, right? Because obviously, you know, we have the original movie, and I think a lot of folks, you know, it holds a near and dear place in their heart. I know for me, when word came out that this movie was going to be a thing, I was just like, oh, Jesus, like, what are they going to do to my beloved Pete's Dragon? And so going into this movie, you know, I was a little worried. Like, I liked the trailers, but you kind of see the design of the dragon a little bit in the trailers. But, you know, when you really get to see him up close and personal, you get a real feel for, I think, kind of what they're going for. And I don't know how much we can talk about without it being a spoiler, so maybe I'll wait a little bit on some of that. But I liked the direction that they took with the dragon. It's not often I see a fuzzy dragon. I'm so used to, like, scales and
But we have before.
angles and
Right? But we have before, or maybe that character wasn't a dragon. I don't know. But
It's Falcor?
Yeah, it resembled a dragon.
He's a luck dragon.
It's a dragon. He has fur.
I'm just saying we don't see fuzzy dragons often, so it was nice to see that. Yes. Actually. Yes. We've been watching a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender lately, the cartoon, not the god-awful movie, and I just Appa the sky bison, big fluffy flying sky bison, is one of my favorite characters, and so, you know, we're watching this movie and, like, you know, Elliot is kind of fluffy and cuddly a little, but he's still like a dangerous fucking dragon. So I kind of loved that there was a balance between the two. Story-wise, I think it was a great update. I'm glad that this is not a musical. I think if we had Bryce Dallas Howard, like, singing from the top of a lighthouse, I'd, you know, probably just not be as into this movie, I guess. But the kid actor, you know, we talk about our hatred of precocious kids. You know, this was kind of like Room with the Dragon in a way. Like, the kid's hair was, you know, instead of his hair being his strength, You know, it was his dragon. Jim, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were
No,
you saying?
I think this actor and the character reminds me a lot of Jacob Tremblay from Room, and you know, the character that he played had. I don't know if the director made the kid watch that movie or what, but I mean, he at times it was uncanny how much those performances are very similar. I think young Jacob Tremblay in Room had much more to do probably in that movie, and so probably stood out a little bit more. But yeah, I thought this kid did a really, really good job.
Yeah, I agree. We've got another live comment from Cliffy who says, "How did this kid compare to the kid in the Jungle Book?" And for me, I think this kid was way better, partially because he had, you know, other people to act against, and you know, not just green screening it. But Will, since you made the mention of Jungle Book earlier, what was your feeling here?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't like the Jungle Book all that much, and the big reason I hated it, aside from a really terrible musical number later in the movie, was I thought I did not like the kid's performance. I think the kid, you know, nothing against him. It's hard to be a child actor and try to carry all of that weight when acting in probably a completely green room against CGI things that aren't really there. I don't hold it against the kid, but it was not a convincing performance to me. It was very stilted, very wooden, every line that came out of his mouth, and it took me out of that movie. Here, I never felt that. I felt very immersed within this story. I felt like whenever Pete's interacting with Elliot, like I was very quickly able to just like suspend all disbelief and go, "There's a kid talking to a giant green dragon." When he was interacting with some of the heavy hitters, you know, like your Robert Redfords and your Bryce Dallas Howards, I thought the kid held his own. Like when there was any emotional weight he had to bring to those scenes, he at least stepped up to the plate and did what he needed to do. He's not a Jacob Tremblay for me. I think, you know, in that, like, I mean, that was like a next level performance, and I think this was a really solid performance. But yeah, way better than the Jungle Book in terms of like the lead actor for me.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing here is I think the direction was that this kid was supposed to be like a normal kid that gets orphaned very early. He grows up with a dragon in the woods. He's not hanging around. It's kind of like the boy raised by wolves a little bit, right? And so, whereas Mowgli, who is really a boy raised by wolves, I think they were trying to make him more of like the original Mowgli was. He was kind of a plucky, fresh, you know. Right. That character was totally different than what you would see. You would kind of see, maybe think about if you encountered like a boy lost in the woods, right? I just think, and this is not necessarily to that actor's. I guess I don't want to put it all on that actor as being a bad actor. First of all, you're right, Brad. He had to do it in front of green screen, not with real people and stuff. Second, and that's tough for a seasoned actor to do. Never mind a kid that you pull out of nowhere that probably doesn't have a lot of that acting experience. Secondly, you're trying to make him act like this kind of outdated character in a way, and I think that probably hurt that performance a little bit too. But as far as the dragon, yeah, I mean, I saw very early on in the trailers that the dragon was, had fur, and that didn't bother me at all. Maybe because I had time to kind of get used to it. But in the movie, I thought it worked really well. I mean, I think they wanted to, some people have cynically said, oh, that's so they can sell more toys because it's easier to make, furry toys than it is to make scaly toys. And I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. But it had to do with the way that the boy and the audience is supposed to feel about this creature that they encounter in this movie pretty early on in the movie. I'm not going to spoil it. We'll get into that soon. But this movie doesn't shy away from showing you the dragon. This isn't like, oh, we'll just show the dragon's feet and boom, 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 and then you won't see the dragon. I mean, this movie comes right out and shows you right off the bat. They're not playing those kind of games where they kind of want to hold back and have a big reveal. That all happens pretty early in the movie, and I want to talk about that scene when we get into spoilers.
Yeah, it's interesting, the whole, like, did they do this to sell more toys or what have you? Like, first of all, any type of movie that's being marketed at this level, there's a certain level of, like, marketability that's to it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as it works within the confines of the story. You know, Brad, you can attest to this from like your old He-Man and Transformers days. Sometimes they introduced characters just for the sake of like, you know, like, hey, we need a new toy for this toy line, but sometimes they were still really fucking cool.
Definitely.
And that's, you know, so regardless, like I'll even say, you know, did they do it to sell more toys? I don't care. It worked here in this movie very well. I think that this dragon is a nurturing element in Pete's life. And that fuzziness, I think, helps contribute to that. Like, we don't feel that, like, oh man, this kid's going to get killed by this wild animal at any moment. We are on board with Pete, you know, as he makes the decisions he makes. I think this is cool. Yeah, I like the design.
So definitely recommend from all three of us. I think now is a good spot to go ahead and maybe transition to some spoilers for 10 minutes or so, and then for those of you folks patiently waiting for Sausage Party, the sausage is coming, we promise.
It's coming.
We know you want your sausage.
We'll make the sausages touch. But in any event, spoilers for Pete's Dragon, fair game for about the next 10 minutes or so. If you're watching live, feel free to step away, come back in a bit if you want your innocence preserved. But Jim, why don't you kick us off with spoilers? Because you had kind of broached the subject a little bit earlier, and let's go back to it.
Yeah, there are several scenes in this movie that kind of stood out to me as standout scenes. The first one was right off the bat. Before we get any titles or anything, this is Disney does in this movie what Disney does in almost every movie. Disney, the great parent killers of all time, kills off two parents in this movie in the first 1 minute of the movie. But that scene was done in such an amazing way. I was astounded how, you know, we see the deer jump out in front of the car, and you know, the boy and a young boy and his parents are riding in the car. They're reading a book. The mother turns around, says, "You're the bravest boy I ever know," whatever. Deer jumps out in front of the car. Next thing we know, the whole scene from inside the car goes into slow motion, and stuff starts flying around. It's almost like a dream-like sequence. And the boy doesn't really know what's happening. He's smiling almost through the whole thing. And adults in the audience instantly get a sense of the tragedy that's happening, what's happening in that scene. But I think if you're a kid watching that, they never show the parents get hurt. They never show the parents' bodies. They do show the car flipped upside down and the kid crawling out at the end. But I just love how that scene could play different ways depending on. It's not going to I don't think for most kids it would traumatize them because it didn't show a lot of the trauma of a traumatic event. It just mostly showed the after effects. And then it quickly gets into Pete being chased by these wolves, and then bang, he's rescued by the dragon. We meet the dragon, and boom, we get into the title sequence. I just love the way that scene was done. It kind of understated the horror of a horrific event, but still got the point across, and Disney still gets their 2 points for killing two parents.
And Bambi got revenge, right? Got to kill some people.
Yeah, yes,
that's exactly
definitely
what it was.
Yeah, Bambi gets revenge.
So this is Bambi, I guess 3, because I think they actually had a Bambi 2. This is the sequel. This is part of the extended Bambi universe. It's a franchise. It's I'm right there with you. Like, if I had any one major flaw with this movie, like the major one, it's that the first scene from the opening shot up until the title card, which is that exact scene you described, was so damn good. I think that the rest of the movie was really fun, but like that was like, it's kind of like Up. When you think about Up, you like you think about the first 6 minutes. And when I go back and think about this movie, I think the real next level stuff was like that first scene. That spot where he's spinning in the back seat. What's great about it is I think it would have been very easy to put this look of terror on the kid's face, but instead he had this almost like detached confusion, like he was in this tumultuous situation and didn't know what was going on. And I think that resonates so well with like the age of the character and kind of the adventure that was to come with him. Like, I think that if he had been like in mortal terror in that moment, I think it would have been a completely different movie. Brilliant choice there. I love that so much.
Yeah, and then there was a scene where, kind of early on in the movie, where Elliot's in the town. Um, he's rescued, but he escapes, and he's being chased by a bunch of people, and he gets cornered in this alley, and he's there in like this hospital gown, I guess, right? He escaped from the hospital, and he's just like cowering in the corner, and he starts, with the howling, calling for his friend. I thought that scene was probably the emotional touch point of the movie for me. Like, it definitely showed us or demonstrated to us how lost this kid really is, even in a society, where there's people supposedly helping him. I love that scene too.
Oh man, me too. Especially when Arlo howled back at him.
I know, right?
So,
Yeah,
Brad, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Have you bought this soundtrack yet?
I haven't. I gotta be honest, and I'm a sucker for soundtracks. I don't remember any of the musical cues at all. It didn't really leave a lasting impression on me.
That's because I would say that this is probably in the contention for my favorite soundtrack that of the year. Specifically, there were like 7 or 8 like kind of indie folk country songs that I think, to me, sort of like this wasn't a musical, but they sort of like called back to their musical roots by having these like the Lumineers and Leonard Cohen songs, St. Vincent, some different kind of bands in that general like sphere of music.
I think part of it is that genre of music doesn't do it for me to begin with. And two, like, are you talking about like the hobbity, like forest, like dwarves singing song about dragons?
That there was a song called the Dragon Song, but there were a lot of like these. To me, there's this Robert Redford character whose job is to sort of be they're folk songs. The Robert Redford character. This movie felt like a folk story, like between the way Robert Redford did his like story, the way that everything was very told in kind of like simple terms, the way like a folk story would. And I think this music was a brilliant. Like, if they'd used another genre of music, another style, I don't think that would have been nearly as effective with the finished product. I love this soundtrack.
Yeah, for me, not so much. Part of it's a genre thing, but also, Jim and I have also been watching a lot of Catfish lately, and they always use these like super shitty songs. And like, there were a couple points where they have these songs in the movie. We both look at each other and we're like, "Are we watching Catfish right now?"
Oh no!
Well, listen. So here's what I'll say about the soundtrack, because I don't want to crap all over it. But here's what I'll say: that it didn't initially during the movie make a huge impact on me. Some of those songs I thought were really well. A couple of them I'm not so sure about. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go listen to the soundtrack, give it a listen, and see. I'm sure there's stuff in there that will bring me right back into the movie, and I'll probably like it quite a bit. But yeah, like during the movie, it didn't really make a huge impact on me, at least from a score perspective. Now, maybe some of the songs, the other songs might grow on me. I don't know.
I'm talking less the score. I'm talking like the
actual
like
song.
the actual like the songs. Yeah.
Right.
I
did like the little girl singing the Hobbity Forest Dragon in the Woods song, but I didn't like the song itself, like when it was sung with a full like band or whatever.
I'm really surprised. Like, I know you're normally like, "Oh, I bought the soundtrack," and I'm like, "All right, he had to have gotten this. This is so good." All right, that's
Never can tell. Never can tell.
Hey, we've only got a few minutes left before we got to transition to Sausage Party, so I want to kind of wrap up here with our end of the movie in a way. So what do you guys think about sort of what happens here, right? So basically they help Elliot escape, and Pete decides to stay with humans. They break up, but oh wait, let's go on one more adventure to find Elliot and his family up in the mountains. Was that pat for you guys? Was that perfect for you guys? Jim, what do you think?
I think it was somewhere in between for me. I did like the ending. I thought it was fitting to the movie very much. They had to end it somehow. I didn't know. Obviously, things are. It broke my heart when the scene where they went back to the tree and the cave and all that's been destroyed because now they've been discovered, and Elliot can't stay there, Pete can't stay with Elliot there, and it's that was kind of a touching moment. But to see it all, maybe it was a little pat, but I thought it was gently done, and I liked it.
How about you, Will?
It was the perfect ending that I don't know that they 100% earned. What I mean by that is the actual final sequence, them standing there on that kind of cliffside and watching the dragons fly off, was the kind of the adventurous and sweet and uplifting ending that this film was supposed to have. The problem is that right before it, it's like, goodbye, I hope we'll see each other again. It felt like there was something missing in between that made me feel like they didn't necessarily earn the ending that they were supposed to have all along. So they needed to tighten some things up with the writing there at the end.
I think we needed one more Elliot jumping off a cliff and then like flying up. Or I'm sorry, Pete jumping off a cliff and flying up on Elliot's back.
Pete jumps off the cliff. Oh shit, wrong cliff. Bye, Pete.
Wait, I guess Elliot's not here after all.
Oh, his family's on the other peak. Oops.
We were hallucinating the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, it's hard to give this movie an ending, right? Because you don't want it to end on a sad note. I love the sadness of them parting. Definitely was having a good dinosaur moment there.
It was Puff the Magic Dragon. This was more Puff the Magic Dragon than it was the original
Pete's Dragon. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, close.
No. That's all bullshit, Will. You know it.
Yeah, that's not what
it is. All bullshit.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, happy ending. Yay. Maybe. Do you think we're going to get more Elliot and Pete adventures?
I don't know. I mean, this movie was, who knows? It depends how it's going to do at the box office. Disney has a lot of properties new properties, old properties to resurrect. It will probably be quite a while before we see another Pete's Dragon. So, we'll see how much it has for legs. The thing cost about $65 million, and I think it made $20-something million the first weekend. So it's got a chance to do okay. It'll probably do great in Blu-ray and DVD, but yeah, we'll see. I don't think they're gonna be rushing out to like, hey, let's make another Thor movie.
This will definitely do well in Blu-ray, because like I can totally see families like buying this would be the perfect like classic Disney movie to purchase and like let your kid watch over and over and over again. I see that.
Mm-hmm. If this movie, like Elliot, can keep turning greener and greener and greener, you never know what can happen.
Ba-boom.
But I wonder why he kept turning greener and greener. I know he's magical, but that was kind of interesting.
He didn't turn greener and greener, did he?
Sure he did.
Yeah, twice that happened. When when Pete first touched him, and when
Bryce Howard,
when she first touched him. Both times, his skin went to like
tranquilized and tied up. He was almost dead.
With the second one, but the very first time when, like, right after the accident, right after when Pete walks up and puts his hands on Elliot, that same transformation happens, and I didn't understand why that happened. I didn't understand. I mean, obviously, it was like supposed to represent some sort of connection between them.
Yeah.
There's some sort of magicalness to it, but I didn't. Even now, thinking back, I'm like, they could have done something else with that. They
curious.
As simple as the movie was, it didn't really hold your hand in all the places, so that's good.
Indeed.
Oh, by the way, I want to say one more thing. I would say don't spend money and see this in 3D. We saw it in 3D, and I don't think it added hardly anything to the movie. So I think 2D is fine for this movie. Save a few bucks, see it on a big screen, a good screen with good sound, but skip the 3D.
I concur. All right, guys. Well, are we ready? We have people patiently waiting for the sausage party to kick in.
Oh boy. I hope they're not disappointed. Now you're putting the pressure on us.
Are you down to Sausage Party Clown?
I'm down.
I'm
DTSPC, baby.
All right, then. Here we go. Our discussion of Sausage Party. All right, so as usual, we'll give it to you spoiler-free. We'll tell you whether we think this one's worth checking out, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we take you full on board into the spoiler hole. But Will, why don't you kick us off here with your initial thoughts?
Absolutely. So, Sausage Party. This is an R-rated CG animated movie, and it's about all of these different foodstuffs and products in this supermarket, and they're all, they love the fact that they're going to be taken home one day. That's what they want to do. But one sausage, played by Seth Rogen, and some of his friends have to embark on a quest to figure out kind of what's really happening in their world and to try to get back home to their shelves of choice, or their shelves where they belong. I think you can't go very far right now without having seen someone talking about this movie, seeing like the Red Band trailer, or just hearing people going like, "Have you guys seen the cursing sex food movie yet?" Like this movie has like a reputation to it. Here's the thing, I kind of liked it, and I'm surprised that I kind of liked it too. In that this is a movie that really only has one note for a lot of its humor. It hits the exact same note over and over again, and sometimes it doesn't work too well. Sometimes just the fact that it's a hot dog that says fuck quite a bit feels repetitive. But this film has some like meta things that it gets to. We'll have to wait to spoilers to really talk about them. That when it really starts revealing what it's going for, I think this movie is a lot more clever than it lets on at first, and I appreciate that. Not all of the voice acting is a slam dunk, but some of it is. I mean, you've got an all-star cast here: Jonah Hill, Selma Hayek, Kristen Wiig, James Franco, Edward Norton, Michael Cera, Nick Kroll, Danny McBride, Paul Rudd, Bill Hader. Pretty much that entire, like, everyone that you like of that particular like age group and demographic somewhere is in this movie. The one thing I think to be kind of cognizant about is a lot of the humor in this is really focused on the idea of being offensive, and I don't mean just like sexual terms, and I don't just mean like dropping a bunch of F-bombs, although yeah, that's a huge portion of this movie. But this film also steers very heavily into a lot of racially themed humor.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be aware of that. It almost gets away with it more than a lot of similar films might, because a good portion of that comes from it playing off of the same kind of racial stereotyping that you see in classic food advertising to begin with. So it kind of veers into a lot of this stuff. That said, like, it is one of those, like, if someone were to say to me, I didn't like this movie and it was because of the racially themed humor, I can't disagree with them, because I can totally see that being something that someone would have a hard time overlooking. That said, I had fun with this movie, and I'm also impressed as hell that the studio that did this, they did this for like 1/8 or so of the budget of like a Pixar movie. Like, this was like a $20 million movie, and you don't see like Disney or Pixar getting away with anything like this for less than like, what, 160? So the fact that they pulled this off, and the animation I thought looked pretty good, I think definitely speaks to just the quality of work that went into this. So yeah, believe it or not, it's a recommend from me, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
Oh goodness, this is a big old giant pass for me. Sorry. I don't know, man.
Is it the racial humor?
It made me really uncomfortable, actually. The racial humor, the stereotyping, and there's just little things, not necessarily overt, but like there's like a taco character that is like the most stereotypical, like, I don't know. It made me uncomfortable, and I think that's part of it. I don't really mind so much the animation paired with like, bad language. I mean, that's fine. I'm an adult. That works for me. I'm cool with that. But I just think it's it goes a little too far. I was kind of comparing this to South Park a little bit because South Park likes to kind of push those boundaries, and I kept seeing lines that like South Park would approach for fun a little and then like back away from, whereas Sausage Party kind of like gets in a rocket ship and like flies over those lines. So I don't know. For me, I think it was just a little too much with some of the racial stereotyping. I will say I liked some of the jokes, I guess. There were some puns going on. Some of them worked for me, some didn't. I didn't relish all of them, but I did like the animation. I think that especially with the gosh, how to talk about it without spoilers. Just some of the god elements, gods in their elements.
Oh my god.
Were really interesting to me from like an animation feel and how the movie looked. Definitely, I mean, there's a lot of talent in the cast. I liked Kristen Wiig as Brenda the Bun. She's probably one of my more favorite characters. Salma Hayek, I love anything with Salma Hayek. She's phenomenal. And it was interesting trying to pick out some of the voices. It wasn't until I saw the credits, because I never look at IMDb before I go into a movie. I try not to even watch trailers if I can help it sometimes. Yeah. I like to be surprised by these things. So watching the credits, I'm like, oh my god, that was so-and-so? Oh, that's so awesome. So, I mean, it was entertaining, but like it's nothing that I would say you have to really go out, spend your money to see in a $40 night out. This would be more of like a Netflix and maybe a chill movie. And we have a live comment from Grizzlius again, who says, "Weird sausage party question. Are there any human or food dicks shown?" Would it be a spoiler to answer his question right now?
Wait. I would say, let's. Can we answer that in spoilers?
I think we can. I think we can dance around. I think we can just say a yes or no, and that wouldn't necessarily spoil any.
Well, he asked two questions there. Is that two questions or one?
Well, he said, "Are there any human or food dicks shown?"
Well, food doesn't have dicks, but there are. I would say no. There are no human dicks in this movie that I saw.
Well, humans can be dicks, but I don't think.
Oh, I get
No. They get away with a lot by. I mean, honestly, when it comes to that stuff, they do a lot more with like suggestion as opposed to just like seeing like dangling genitalia on screen. Like they hint all. Yeah.
There's a package of hot dogs and a package of buns. That's all I'm gonna say.
You do the math.
Right.
All right. So we've got to recommend and we've got to pass. Jim, you're in the enviable position of having to break a tie.
Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to come down on the side of pass with this one, and it's not for the same reasons as you, Brad. I really wasn't offended by much of this movie, and maybe that's why I'm giving it a pass. I think this movie pressed so hard to try to be offensive and try to be edgy that it came off very like trying too hard. Like, okay, you're really cool. You could say fuck, a number of times, and you could show food saying fuck, and talking about sex and graphic stuff like that. That's all cool, but I don't know, man. It's funny. I'm trying to do some soul searching as to why I didn't click with this movie, but there are other movies like I'm going to take a movie like. Let's take the one that's coming up, Bad Santa. We talked about Bad Santa 2 is coming up, right? Bad Santa. Now, one's animated, one's live action, one's got real humans, one's got food talking. But they both have very raunchy humor. But I just like the edginess. For some reason, I like the edginess infinitely more edgy in Bad Santa than in this movie for some reason. There was more of it here, but quantity does not equal quality for me when it comes to comedy. And this movie just tried to do everything. There were some great scenes in this movie, and we're going to talk about them in spoilers, that I really liked. And if the more of the movie could have been that, I think it would have been great. I didn't really get behind any one of the characters. I mean, they were all just not very likable or interesting to me. I don't know how they could have done that better, but I'm not a movie maker, but yeah, we get it. The hot dogs are the dicks and the buns are the vaginas. Get it? And then but there are whole scenes that center around that concept, and it doesn't get funnier with every joke. It just didn't. We'll get into some of the other examples of that.
So Jim, we have a live question from Cliffy who says, would it have been better for you if they had actually been sex toys? That would have been edgier, right?
No, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. It's just that the comedy just didn't. It's like adult humor versus 14-year-old boy humor. It's not the same.
Right.
You know what I mean? Adult humor is usually more cutting than what you would get out of like a adolescent boy. This felt like Seth Rogen and his buddies getting high, and maybe that was the problem. Maybe I was not high when I saw this movie. Because seriously, I swear, if I was high, I might have liked it a lot better. And yeah, well, we'll get into that. It's a Seth Rogen movie, so there's going to be weed jokes and stuff centered around drug use all through this movie as well. Yeah, and this movie does try to do some social commentary on some things. And there are the Jews versus Arabs get into this. There's some gay storylines. But they bring up all these things and they kind of shine a light on these issues, but they don't really do anything with them. In the end, it's done for humor and for nothing else. So I'm not going to give it credit for being socially edgy, because just because it brings up a topic doesn't mean it explores it in any real way. But we can debate about that, how much we think the movie explored those.
Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, it's a pass for me for those reasons and more. As the movie went on, I got less and less interested, except for a few scenes that I thought were very inventive and like really pulled me in. And we could talk about those more in spoilers.
I think it explored one topic extremely well, and it's one that we haven't talked about here yet. I think the other ones that you mentioned, those weren't necessarily things that it was exploring as much as things that it was doing for the joke. It wasn't really exploring Jews versus Arabs. It wasn't just necessarily exploring gay things. It was more just those were parts of the jokes. Everyone became part of the punchline. The one theme that it really went into, I thought, and kind of, I think that's why I like this movie so much. It had a real message about
atheism?
A very specific thing about atheism. This is a movie that's basically about hey, this is probably the most interesting for me study of atheism as a kind of tracing back kind of the source of religion or stuff like that in a movie since the invention of lying, which was Ricky Gervais movie from a while back. I thought that they really did some interesting things there. I enjoyed that, and I will say this is not a movie that by no stretch, while this is a recommend for me, no stretch is this a perfect movie, nor is it a movie that I think got away with all of its flaws. This movie, I compare it so much to the South Park Bigger, Longer, Uncut movie, which was another movie that was all about animation, pushing boundaries, and also having sort of some meta commentary. I think they have that in common, but I think what South Park did was it focused on a couple of different meta things so that you always had a different subplot to a different message to kind of weave through by the time you got to the end. Whereas this one, when it wasn't doing that, it relied on the more blue humor, and that got a little tiresome in places. I would almost say, I think if this was a 55-minute movie, cut a good portion out of it out, I think this would be a fucking A+ movie at about that range. But some of the jokes do get repeated a little too often for my taste.
Yeah, it definitely suffers from that, because it's almost like, hey, they didn't get the hot dog bun thing the first time around. We should do it 8 or 9 times more to make really sure they understand that hot dogs are dicks and buns are vajayjays. And it's kind of like, I mean, I enjoy dick and vajayjay jokes as much as anybody else, but when you belabor the point, when you jackhammer that point enough,
the jackhammer,
it just gets tiresome. So, all right. Well, how are we feeling spoiler-wise? Are we good? Are we ready?
I think we've got we've got to do spoilers.
Let's get into it.
All right. So spoilers for Sausage Party, fair game. We'll give you a second. If you got to step away, feel free to do so. But we are going to go ahead and spoil this movie for probably the next 10 minutes or so. So, Will, you brought up this whole point of atheism, right? And that's what I want to go back to. So we have a comment, actually, from Nurico455. Ron, hello, Ron. It says, do you think the blasé nature toward people of faith is an issue? I kind of felt shamed for having faith in God. Jim, you're nodding.
Yeah, because I don't think this movie was necessarily about atheism. I think this was definitely... movie was lampooning a lot of different things, a lot of different belief systems. And we in spoilers now, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. So the movie starts out with that all these products in the store that are anthropomorphized, or whatever the word is, have a belief. They've all been trained to have this belief in God. God being the people that come into the store, buy the stuff, and bring them home to nirvana, right? That's the thing. And of course, we know what happens to food when it's brought home, right? It's prepared, chopped up, cooked, baked, whatever, fried, and eaten, right? So that's a pretty cool concept. But yeah, I don't know if the movie. I don't know if you should feel ashamed for having your belief system, okay? I think what the movie's trying to say, and maybe it wasn't real clear, instead of just saying, well, that's silly that you believe in that, it's that we each need to examine our belief systems from time to time, and that's what this movie, I think, wanted to do. I think it was so over the top that I think the message got a little muddled. That's my opinion.
What I liked about it was, and this is why I liked, this was the part of the movie that I enjoyed the most, actually, because I didn't feel like it was necessarily saying, your individual religion is bad. What this basically does is this kind of creates this mythology within the supermarket world, where there's this one common, origin story. Origin story for life, that gets perpetuated from Firewater and those. And then each of the individual groups, based on their individual needs, distorted that for whatever their own political purposes were. So it was less, for me, a treatise about atheism itself, although you did have a character like the Seth Rogen character who would fall into that camp by the end of this movie. The big message for me, especially when he kind of says the whole thing there, and it's like everyone's sort of saying, yeah, you can have your beliefs, but don't be a dick about it, was, don't use your faith and your beliefs to try to attack the person on the aisle across from you. You see a little bit of that with the bagel and what's the other guy's name?
The Lavash.
Lavash, yeah, Lavash and Sammy Bagel Jr. Yeah. With their little storyline there, it was less that, by the end of it, they weren't necessarily like, oh yeah, we're atheists now, we were wrong all along. They just re-examined each other in a completely different light.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly true. So let's talk about that, because at the end of the movie, we're in spoilers, it's fair game, they all end up basically just having a giant orgy. Salma Hayek eats out Kristen Wiig, and Seth Rogen is having sex.
That last 4 or 5 minute orgy sequence was insane. I mean, it was you talk about pushing boundaries. That was your rocket ship right there, Brad.
Right.
Every single sexual thing that you could do with food products, it was happening on the screen. I mean, representation of anal sex, vaginal sex, oral sex,
blowjobs,
quad penetration. It was all there, and it was kind of wild.
It was wild. You know what's kind of nice about it? That whole scene, everyone kind of got into everything together. You didn't have any characters who were like, no, I'm not into the gay shit. You didn't have any of that. At that moment right there, everyone just kind of got down to it. I thought that was, for a movie that, I think the only time we saw something that was really, someone saying something bad about gay was the douche character who was being a douche when he was like saying, "Yeah, I just sucked some guy's dick."
Right.
Well, didn't Firewater keep making like closeted weird cracks like, oh, it's sort of suck a guy.
Suck a guy strange, you know?
Strange, you know?
Like, or fuck
Yeah,
a
but
guy weird. I mean, that was a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he also then like sucked a dude's dick there at the end. Like I think it felt
Probably.
less like him being like, yeah, he was fucking the Twinkie at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one more live comment from Cliffy who says, "What did you guys think about the ending? I thought it petered, out at the end. Reminded me of some Mel Brooks movies that just didn't know how to end."
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Other than that, I mean, they really put a punctuation mark on it though with that all-out orgy scene. I thought that was really over the top, and whether you like that stuff or not, it was very out there. I mean, it was just everything they could throw at the screen to have that. And I guess at the end, it all built up to just a huge orgasm, right? Was that what it was?
Right, that was the metaphor with the fireworks, I think.
Yeah.
I would have.
Go ahead, Will.
No, I was gonna say I would have been okay if they had done something like. I think they could have ended on a really dark note, and I would have enjoyed it more. Because you're right, it did just kind of like, all right, cool. Like, the orgy scene was funny. I laughed quite a bit, but that was, it then rolled into this like weird meta thing, like, because that's when they go like, they find out that they're like in an animation, and they go into, they're not actually food. They're actually in a cartoon.
Oh.
Let's go through this thing.
The Stargate came out of nowhere.
Right.
I would have liked. I thought it was.
Brad got a chuckle out of it, though.
I did. I liked the toilet bowl seat Stargate thing. It was just, it was just a little weird.
Disconnected.
I would have gone dark, like this is the supermarket. A bunch of people just got killed, and now it's like in ruins. Like, what if the last scene was them all celebrating and having their orgy, and then just like a bulldozer comes and just kind of takes them over as like corporate comes in and like gets rid of it for the next thing or something like that.
Yeah.
Just like go dark, like kill them all off at the end. Why not? Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of killing them all off, I want to talk about the couple of scenes that I liked. There was a scene early on in the movie. It was called I call it the shopping cart crash scene.
The Normandy scene.
Like Saving Private Ryan. Where the flour explodes and they're all coming through the fog of the flour. I thought that was pretty well done. I kind of enjoyed that scene quite a bit. And the other scene I liked was the kitchen. The housewife making stew scene, where, okay, now these products, they're thinking they're going to heaven or paradise or whatever, and they're in the kitchen, and she's getting ready to make the stew, and then she starts, like, peeling the potato and cutting the vegetables, and she throws a couple of the carrots in her mouth and starts chewing on them, and we get the camera's eye view from inside her mouth of these carrot characters getting squished to death and eaten by. I thought that scene, now that was starting to, go to an area where I would expect a movie like this to go to. And they did. And I thought that scene worked really well.
And I like, when like the misshapen hot dog is on the windowsill with Barry or whatever, right? And like the knife like sticks through his friend from behind.
And they just slices him.
And just slices him. You know what I mean? I thought that was great. And then something I mentioned before spoilers I wanted to touch back on real quick before we wrap. So, we end up with this hot dog. He's sort of on his brave little toaster adventure. He ends up, in the apartment of this guy who's shooting up bath salts. Now he has the ability to like see and hear the food or whatever. But was his apartment not like the grossest thing ever? Like the Chinese carton full of like rice with cigarette butts put out in it. Like I wanted to puke. Like that was so disgusting. But it was so good too, because it's like, I'm pretty sure someone shooting up bath salts would probably live somewhere like that.
It was disgusting, but it was extremely well animated for that particular character. And to that point, like that character had what I thought was like my most shocking moment of the movie. We're in spoilers. We can talk about it. There's a point where like all of a sudden the Michael Cera character who had been like last we saw him, he was about to get eaten by this dude.
Right.
When all of a sudden he shows back up in the supermarket and he's like, "Oh yeah, we killed him," and the dude's head just pops out of the air conditioning vent. That was my audible gasp of the movie. It's just like, holy shit, they went there. Like they decapitated a dude. So I think I had fun with that.
Your food fights back.
You're not alone. We got another comment from Ron, who said that he had an oh shit moment when the head fell out of the AC unit as well. So, I had an oh shit moment, and it was more not because it was something that like scared me or anything, but it was more like, oh my god, I can't believe they went there. When Barry is like out on the streets and he runs into like the jizz filled condom.
Right.
Like you just see the strings
Everybody
of
in the
jizz
audience.
in its mouth.
Everybody in the audience is like, ooh. Yeah, that was awesome.
One of the things that I heard about this, so a lot of the people, like the guy that directed this, there's two directors to it. One of which did like Madagascar and Shrek 2 and stuff, but the other one he cut his teeth doing all of the Thomas the Tank Engine movies. Like that was his experience before this. And so when Seth Rogen sought them out, like he wanted people who specifically did like he wanted actual animation directors, not just like himself or one of his friends doing it. Like he wanted people who this is what they did. And one of the things that I read about this is apparently all the people that did all the animation, like this was one of the most fun. Like a lot of times when you're working on like a Disney or Pixar movie, like okay, I'm at the grind, I've got to do all this stuff. Oh man, now I'm bored and I'm kind of getting pissed off, so I'm gonna draw the Little Mermaid with giant tits getting fucked by Sebastian. And like that's the type of thing they would do just to kind of keep themselves sane. So they got to do an entire movie of animating like all the stuff that they would doodle on the side. So I just thought that was really interesting, like just how much fun the animators had just getting a chance to do all of this stuff. And I think it showed. I think like if there's any faults or praises for this movie, I think you can definitely tell like anything that went into like the animation and all of that. Like I don't feel like they cut any quarters. I think they put some care into this.
There's a reason why. I'm reading a report right now. Sausage Party allegedly forced animators to work overtime for free and refused to credit artists. So, yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of hard work and heart put into it.
There's a whole thing going on in the industry. We could have a whole show about about these animation studios and how they're hired, and it's kind of like outsourcing animation and all that stuff, and that happens. I think what Will's talking about though is the creation part of it.
I know. I'm just teasing.
This movie lost me when it had buns and hot dogs sitting out on the same shelf. Like that doesn't happen. Sorry. Right. Totally unrealistic. Not that, talking hot dogs is a...
I mean, to the film's credit, it was for a 4th of July display, and that is the only time I ever see that. When I'm at the grocery store, and it's like, I can't find these fucking things together, but they'll always have that, are you doing a barbecue? Buy all your stuff on this shelf here. So, So that's the one like plausible deniability I'll give to that. Otherwise, yeah.
Very good.
All right. Well, I think we've come to the conclusion.
Good discussion
of our discussion. Yeah, I agree absolutely. And
the fruits. Don't forget the fruits.
Oh yeah,
that was an eye roll moment.
When the fruits are all like dancing and killing.
The fruits are all effeminately gay, of course.
Was that the low-hanging fruit?
Yeah. And of course we had a Twinkie, but no no bear.
He was a twink. He was a twink for sure.
He was a twink.
Oh goodness! All right, you guys. Well, let's go ahead and move on to some plugs. So for me this week, I want to give a little bit of a shout out to Casey Scott from Movers Podcast TV. He has taken over the editing duties of the show, and I just got done listening to last week's episode. We reviewed the first season of Stranger Things, and Casey, you did a hell of a great job on editing. Nicely done. But we had a cool discussion. I'm biased because I was part of the discussion, but if you enjoyed Stranger Things, definitely we had fun talking about it. So check it out in iTunes, Stitcher Radio, our website, all that good stuff. On YouTube, if you want to see our mugs as we're talking about it, feel free. But Jim, what do you got this week?
We talked about it earlier, but I mentioned that I watched Ain't Them Body Saints going into Pete's Dragon. It's a movie from 2 or 3 years ago by the same director as Pete's Dragon. I was really surprised how much I love this movie. It's a movie about a criminal who basically is trying to find his way home to his family, who he left behind when he got incarcerated for crimes that he was committing. It's got great performances by Casey Affleck. Ben Foster is in this, who I really like. Keith Carradine is in this. Showed up in this and kind of surprised me. One of the Carradine brothers. This movie is God, I don't know how to describe it, but it's got such a great feel to it, and the way it addresses the story and how it handles the story so tenderly, and you just got to watch it. Oh, it's got the guy from iRobot. I forget that guy's name, that actor, the lead actor there from iRobot. He's in it for a little while, but yeah, check it out. It's called Ain't Them Body Saints. It really made a splash when it debuted, I think at Sundance a few years ago, and you can find it on VOD right now for a cheap rent, maybe even free on some services. So it's called Ain't Them Body Saints.
All right. Will, close this out.
Yeah, so we kind of have a theme here going with this episode. Obviously, Sausage Party is animated, and Pete's Dragon is live-action animation combo. So I'm going to plug yet another animated movie, and one that I would say of the three I kind of liked the best, and that's The Little Prince. This one falls into a really weird category, though, because this one did not get a theatrical release here in the States. It was supposed to be released by Paramount. They were all ready for it, like trailers everywhere, and then they backed out. So, of course, Netflix, genius Netflix, picks it up, releases it on its platform. Little Prince is really good, man. Like, there were moments in that movie where it's like, I don't know, something was going on, like maybe my allergies, or maybe, I don't know, like I hadn't dusted lately, but just, I don't know, something was going on with my eyes for a good portion of this movie. I don't know what it was. Yeah, this movie definitely hits you in the feels. And it blends a couple of different animation styles in a very clean way. I really like The Little Prince.
I have to catch up with that one. Will, did you watch that on what VOD did you watch that?
It's on Netflix. Yeah, Netflix. Paramount decided, you know what, we're not going to do a U.S. theatrical release with this, so we're just gonna let it sit. And Netflix said we'll do it. And so yeah, it is a Netflix property now.
Well, there you go. All right. Awesome. Well, guys, I think that wraps us for this week. I am hella. Do people still say hella? I don't know. We were talking about South Park, and now I'm all like, hella, hella, hella. I'm hella excited to talk about Kubo and the Two Strings next week.
Yeah.
Finally, that movie is coming, and another animated movie coming down the pipeline, but we're okay with that. It works. Hopefully it's good. We'll see. But just want to give a quick shout out to all of our listeners who were commenting live. So Cliffy and Ron and Grizius and all of you folks who listen week after week or tune into the show and comment. We love hearing from you guys. It really helps to kind of shape the discussion. We like hearing your thoughts. So definitely, if you are listening on digital tape delay, feel free to comment on Facebook or send us an email, Brad at moviebrewspodcast.com, Jim at Will at, same thing. Comment away. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe we'll share some of them next week. We will see you all next time. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.